All right, so are you ready to dig in? Because today we're talking about prepared meals nutritionists.
Prepared Meals Nutritionist sounds delicious, right?
All right, but also kind of mysterious.
Yeah.
Like, what do they actually do all day? You send over some stuff about this, a career guide, some info about this RoleCatcher platform, so let's unpack it, figure out if this is like a real career possibility for you or just something that sounded cool for a hot minute.
Yeah, because it's easy to romanticize, right? Like, oh, I love food. I could totally be a food person.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then there's reality. Thankfully, this RoleCatcher guide gets into the nitty-gritty, and the tasks they list are super interesting. Evaluating meals, analyzing ingredients, advising on like what goes in those meals.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's like the whole life cycle of a prepared meal. They're involved from start to finish, making sure it's nutritionally sound every step of the way.
And they don't forget about things like allergens, which is huge for a lot of people these days, making sure the macros and micronutrients are all balanced. It's not as simple as just throwing some healthy-ish ingredients together.
Not at all. It's very precise. And speaking of precision, there was this whole thing in here about technology advances impacting the field, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, it's not just about traditional nutrition science anymore, is it? Like, what kind of technology are we even talking about here?
I mean, there's your standard food databases and stuff, but we're talking sophisticated analysis software that can calculate nutritional values instantly, personalize nutrition plans based on individual needs, using some pretty cool tech.
So it's like a high-tech nutritional toolbox. I'm picturing a prepared meals nutritionist in a lab coat, surrounded by computers, analyzing data, and, like using lasers to adjust recipes or something. Okay, maybe I've been watching too much sci-fi.
Maybe. Maybe. But honestly, those technological advancements are changing how meals are designed, how they're produced, everything. So a prepared meals nutritionist today has to be comfortable with tech to be successful.
Which kind of makes you wonder, is this the right path for you? I mean, it sounds cool so far, but like every job, there are pros and cons. This guy actually lists them out pretty clearly.
Lay 'em on me.
All right, so on the plus side, flexibility, helping people directly, pretty good job stability, all good things, right? But then there's the flip side. High responsibility, potential for burnout, maybe weird hours.
And don't forget the emotional side of things. You're dealing with the people's health, their relationship with food, cultural backgrounds. That can get complicated.
Oh, tell me about it. Remember that juice cleanse I tried? Emotionally, I was all over the place. Starving, missing chewing, and good luck explaining to your friends why you won't eat their delicious food.
Exactly. And as a prepared meals nutritionist, you're helping people navigate that. It takes a lot of empathy, communication. You're like a counselor, a cheerleader, and an educator all rolled into one.
Okay, so it's definitely more than meets the eye. But let's say someone's listening and they're hooked. How do you even become a prepared meals nutritionist?
Well, it's not just watching cooking shows on repeat, that's for sure. You need a solid education, and there are a few different paths you can take.
And this guide lists some of those academic pathways. We've got the obvious ones: food science, nutrition, dietetics. But then it gets interesting. Culinary arts is on there too.
See, that's what got me excited. Blending a love of food and cooking with all that nutrition science, it's the best of both worlds.
So you're not just creating a meal plan, you're creating an experience, like a culinary adventure that's actually good for you.
Exactly. And that's what makes this profession so unique. You need the analytical mind for the science part, but also that creative spark to make food appealing. Because no one's going to follow a meal plan no matter how healthy if it tastes like cardboard.
100% agree. It's about finding that perfect balance, flavor and nutrition. Okay, so you've got your degree, maybe even one of those fancy chef hats.
Yeah.
And what?
Time to get some real-world experience. And this guy does a good job of laying out those career stages, what to expect as you progress.
And it all starts with entry-level roles, right?
Right. Think of it like an apprenticeship. You'll be assisting more senior nutritionists, getting involved in research, maybe even some quality control.
Oh, yeah. And the guide gives an example of what an entry-level prepared meals nutritionist actually does day to day. They assist senior nutritionists, evaluate the nutritional quality of the food. It's hands-on right away.
Totally. It's not all textbooks at that point. They're researching ingredients, contributing to, the knowledge base of the whole field.
That's so cool. I bet they get to try all kinds of interesting foods and come up with new recipes, too.
Oh, for sure. They even talk about developing allergen-free meals in this profile, which is huge these days.
Right. Making sure everyone can enjoy delicious, healthy food is so important. This guide really stresses that understanding and accommodating different dietary needs.
It's not enough to just make healthy food. It has to work for different lifestyles, cultures, allergies, everything.
It's like being a nutritional detective, figuring out the perfect meal plan for each person.
Love that analogy. And it requires a deep understanding not just of nutrition, but also, like you said, cultures, food sensitivities, the psychology of eating.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground. This is clearly a career with a ton of depth.
And we're just getting started. We'll be back in a bit to uncover more about what it takes to build a successful career as a prepared meals nutritionist.
Okay, so we know what a prepared meals nutritionist does,
hmm
but where do they actually work? I'm guessing it's not all like sunny kitchens and test kitchens.
All right. Not exactly. And that's what I like about this guide. It doesn't sugarcoat things. Yeah, food manufacturing plants are a big one, obviously.
Yeah.
You gotta have someone making sure those meals are actually nutritious. But there are other options, too.
Like what? Give me the rundown.
Well, we're talking research labs developing new food tech, hospitals figuring out how to feed patients healthy meals,
Yeah.
even restaurants.
Wait, restaurants?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Think about it. People care about healthy eating more than ever, right? So restaurants need to up their game. Having a prepared meals nutritionist on board means they can offer dishes that are both delicious and good for you. It's a win-win.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But this guide also keeps it real about the not-so-glamorous stuff. Like, working in a factory probably means dealing with, safety protocols, maybe not the most exciting environment.
Definitely. It's not all like playing with food and being creative. You might be in an industrial setting, dealing with potential hazards, strict hygiene standards. Gotta be tough.
It's not just about loving food. It's about being able to handle those situations, too.
And let's not forget about the people skills. There's a whole section in this guide on typical interactions, which is so important. They're not just working alone in a lab.
Right. So who are they talking to?
They're working with the manufacturers, suppliers, chefs, even the marketing folks. It's about bringing a product to life, and that takes a team.
So you need to be a team player on top of everything else. Communicating your ideas clearly, knowing when to compromise.
Exactly. Diplomacy is a good word for it. Okay, so we've established that this career path needs a pretty diverse skill set. And luckily, this guide breaks it all down for us. This functions and core abilities section.
Wow, there's a lot here.
Hit me with the highlights.
All right, so the top three are critical thinking, reading comprehension, and active listening. Kind of essential for any job these days, right?
Sure. But how does that actually apply to a prepared meals nutritionist?
Well, think about it. They're bombarded with information constantly, new research, food trends, people arguing about what's actually healthy. It's a lot.
So critical thinking helps them like filter through all that noise.
Exactly. They have to figure out what's legit, what's just hype, and base their decisions on science, not fads.
Got it. Okay, what about reading comprehension? Are they like buried in scientific journals all day? Pretty much. Journals, industry reports, government regulations, even just understanding those super detailed food labels. Being a fast and accurate reader is key.
It's like being a detective, but instead of clues, it's nutrition facts.
Right. And finally, we have active listening. Sounds basic, but it's huge in this field.
Especially because they're interacting with people constantly, like you said.
Exactly. Understanding clients' needs, brainstorming with chefs, addressing concerns from manufacturers. It all comes down to listening.
It's about really hearing people out, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
100%. And that actually leads perfectly into the next set of skills, which are all about communication written and verbal.
So it's not enough to just know all this stuff about nutrition.
Yeah.
You got to be able to explain it to other people, too.
Exactly. Presenting research to your colleagues, breaking down dietary guidelines for clients, even writing those little blurbs on food packaging. Communication is everything.
Man, we've covered so much already. It's clear that a prepared meals nutritionist has to wear a lot of hats. Scientist, communicator, detective.
Oh, and don't forget, lifelong learner. This field is always changing. There's always something new to discover.
So you're constantly learning, staying curious.
Yeah,
That's what keeps things interesting, I guess.
for sure. Okay, we talked about skills, but what about actual knowledge? What do they need to, actually understand about food and nutrition? This guide goes into some serious detail there.
All right, let's get technical. Hit me with the knowledge bombs.
It all starts with biology. That's the foundation. You got to understand the human body, how it processes food, all that good stuff.
Makes sense since you're basically creating fuel for people's bodies.
Exactly. And not just fuel, but like how do different nutrients affect our energy, our moods, even our long-term health? It's all connected.
Okay, so that's the human side of things. What about the food itself? I see chemistry on this list.
Yes. Chemistry is all about understanding the building blocks of food, what's in those ingredients, how they react when you cook them, how those reactions affect the nutrition and safety of the final product.
So it's like food science on a molecular level.
Pretty much. But then there's this whole other layer, food production. That's where we go beyond the lab and into the real world.
We're talking farms, factories, the whole system.
Exactly. A prepared meals nutritionist can't just think about what's healthy in a vacuum. They have to consider things like sustainability, ethical sourcing, how food gets from the farm to our plates. It gets complex.
Man, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, but instead of crying, we're learning.
Ha. I like that. And it's important to remember this whole system is constantly changing. New tech, new research, evolving consumer tastes. It's a lot to keep up with.
So how does a prepared meals nutritionist stay ahead of the curve? What does this guide say about that?
Well, there's a big emphasis on production and processing. They need to understand how food is made on a large scale, the technology, the safety protocols, how it all impacts the nutrition and quality of the final product.
Right, because it's one thing to whip up a healthy meal in your kitchen, but making sure thousands of meals meet those same standards, that's a whole other challenge.
Totally. And that's where this knowledge of production and processing comes in. It's like bridging the gap between culinary arts and like factory level production.
This is so fascinating. I feel like we could talk about this all day, but we are running a little short on time. I can't wait to dive into even more about this. All right, so someone's been putting in the work, gaining experience. What's next? How do you actually move up in this field?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. This guide lays out some potential career stages, and it's not just about how long you've been doing it. You can specialize, go into management. There are tons of paths, depending on what you're into.
So you could be like the gluten-free guru for a big food company, or maybe focus on sustainability, making sure those ingredients are ethically sourced.
Exactly. Or maybe you lead a team developing meals for, like, athletes or people with specific dietary needs. The possibilities are kind of endless.
Okay, I'm getting inspired here. But how do you actually make those leaps? Experience is great and all, but is there more to it?
This guide really stresses the importance of, like, seeking out those opportunities proactively. Don't just wait for them to come to you.
Be the one making things happen. I
Yeah.
like it. So what, like taking extra courses, going to conferences, stuff like that?
That's a big part of it for sure. Certifications are huge in this field too. It shows you're serious about your craft.
Are there any certifications that are like the ones to have? The ones that make employers go, ooh, we need this person.
Oh, absolutely. Becoming a registered dietitian nutritionist or RDN is always a good move. It's nationally recognized, opens a lot of doors, especially if you want to work directly with clients.
Makes sense. What about certified nutrition specialist? I've seen that one around too.
Yeah, CNS is great, especially if you're leaning more towards the research and food science side of things. It really depends on your interests.
Okay, so it's like leveling up your skills. I love it. This guide also mentions creating a professional portfolio, and not just your average resume, right? We touched on this earlier, but what would that look like for a prepared meals nutritionist? Got any examples?
Think of it like a highlight reel of your best work, beautiful photos of meals you've developed, breakdowns of the nutritional content, maybe even testimonials from happy clients.
Okay, now that's a resume I'd want to see,
Yeah.
especially if you've got those allergen-free meals we talked about. Proof that you can actually put this knowledge into practice.
Exactly. It's all about showing, not just telling. And don't underestimate networking either. Go to industry events, join those professional organizations, connect with people online.
Makes sense? Got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, the practical stuff. We've talked about skills, career paths, the whole shebang. But what about the money?
Ah, the million-dollar question. Well, this guide doesn't give hard numbers because it really varies depending on where you live, your experience, all that. It does paint a pretty optimistic picture overall.
So, good potential for a decent salary. People are always going to need to eat, right?
Exactly. And as the demand for healthy, convenient meals keeps growing, so will the need for qualified prepared meals nutritionists.
Music to my ears. Plus, it's not just about the money, is it? It's about making a difference, helping people live healthier lives.
That's what it boils down to, for sure. And as our understanding of nutrition evolves, as technology changes how we eat, this field is only going to become more important.
Wow, when you put it like that, it's kind of inspiring. We've covered so much ground today, from the day-to-day of this job to, like, the future of food.
Right. Who knew there was so much to unpack about prepared meals nutritionists?
Seriously. Huge thanks to everyone who sent in materials for this deep dive. If you're feeling inspired to learn more, and I bet you are, check out the links in the show notes. And until next time, happy listening.